I'm going to go ahead and introduce myself here while we're waiting for some other folks to join. So my name is Julie Wukelik, and I am Chief Executive Officer at Believe in Me. We're a foundation for kids. We've been around since 2006, and we're all about making sure that nonprofits in our community have the resources and support that they need to help kids develop the self-confidence that they're going to need in order to succeed. And we do that around our 5 pillars of caring, which are transitional living, foster care and adoption, wraparound services, education, and enrichment programs. So today we'll be talking a little bit about our grants program and how to successfully complete our grant application, and a little bit about the programs that we have funded in the past, and then we'll open it up to answer questions for folks. So I think if you have any questions, go ahead and put them in the chat, and I'll try to do my best to make sure that I keep an eye on that chat window. And we will, I think, go ahead and get started just in the sake of time. I want to thank everybody for coming on Labor Day. When I set up this webinar, it didn't dawn on me that it was a holiday. So you guys should get 5 gold stars each for showing up on a paid holiday or a national holiday. So hopefully it's not taking away too much time with your family. But like I said, I want to make sure that we're helping set everybody up for success with their grant application. So without further ado, I think I'll go ahead and get started. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. If you guys have any issues with being able to see my screen, please let me know in the chat. I'm going to start off by talking a little bit about our organization. As I mentioned before, our vision here at the Believe in Me Foundation is that every kid grows up to develop the self-confidence that they need to succeed. And as we all know, there are way too many children in our communities who, because of where they live, because of what family they're born into, because of where they're at geographically, they're just kind of set at a disadvantage in relationship to their peers. And so our mission is to really leverage the generosity of the community in order to fund children's charities that are helping these marginalized kids by providing them with a safe place to call home, a family that loves them, a community that wraps around and supports them, and opportunities to learn, build self-esteem, and have fun. We are also very proactive with making sure that as we're making out grants to various nonprofits in the community, that they also kind of align with our views on diversity and inclusion. And so that's really important for our board of directors, as well as our grants administration committee, that the organizations that do apply for our grants do fall in alignment with that. So a little bit about our values. We did some soul searching as an organization, kind of where we're coming from as we serve the community, and 3 things bubbled up to the top. Number 1, we're caring. And every single one of the programs that we've helped to fund is out there compassionately impacting the lives of these children who are struggling in our community. And the whole goal there is that they're going to inspire these kids and provide them with the hope that they need. Sometimes a lot of them are in dire situations, and we really kind of want to come in and show that we care for them, and that show that we want to help them with providing hope for them. Also, our organization is trustworthy. We have an entire team of who are transparently managing the donations of our donors. And the whole goal there is that we want to make sure that we're sustainably managing those donations in such a way that we can successfully continue to fund programs like yours year after year. We are also innovative, and you'll that's really important for you to point out the innovative and new and progressive things that your programs are doing to help troubled kids in new and different ways. If I could just have everybody mute their microphone so that we don't get background noise, that would be really, really great. So an important thing to also understand is our definition of what is a marginalized kid, because everybody probably has their own definition of this. So we look at marginalization as, the definition would be similar to social exclusion. So anytime there's a certain group of kids or individuals who don't have an equal access to various resources in our society, that we would consider them to be marginalized. There's a lot of different ways that you can define marginalization, whether it's ethnicity, gender or sexual orientation, their disability status, socioeconomics, whether or not they're a migrant, what country they come from. Age is also a source of marginalization. And so we just want to make sure that as we're making out grants to different programs, that we're taking care of the kids who are lacking the resources, the rights, the goods or services that other kids kind of take for granted and just happen to have because of the situation that they're born into or that they live in. So that's really kind of where our organization comes in. We want to make sure that we're helping the marginalized kids in the community. And so we've kind of come up with a laundry list of ways that we would consider people to be marginalized. So I'm not going to go over each and every single one of them, but I would tell you that if your organization falls into these categories and has a program that's addressing the needs of these marginalized kids, that you're in a really great place as far as funding for your programs. So having said that, I'm sure all of you are here because you've already landed on our grants page. We did put out an announcement last week that we do have $388,000 available for granting for the 2023 grant cycle. That is running on a calendar year, so January 1 to December 31st. And basically, our grants are open not only to Spokane, Washington, and North Idaho, like the Coeur d'Alene area, but they are available for applicants all across the state of Washington. And if you received one of our emails, it's because, you know, we did a pretty extensive search of all the nonprofits that are operating in Washington state and have expanded out the width and breadth of the organizations that we thought might be interested in applying for our grants. We kind of focused on lower income counties, realizing that the need in these areas is probably higher than in some of the more wealthy areas of our state. And so if you got one of our emails, most likely you are a good candidate for applying. If you learned word of mouth, could be a little bit different, but I'm just going to say, if you care about kids and you're in the entire state of Washington or North Idaho, go ahead and take a stab at it. And if you're still not sure if you should, please feel free to contact me directly. I think I've got a link right here on our grants program page where you can actually easily set up a time to meet with me, and we can chat about whether or not you think you should apply. So the first step in applying for a grant with us, and maybe a lot of you have already done this part, is to click on this little tab here that checks your eligibility. And what this is going to do is just basically help you understand what some of our requirements are. And just to kind of walk you guys through this entire process, I'm going to go ahead and create a test organization so that we can kind of play around with this and you guys can see how it works. So I'm just going to do a fake website here real quick. Sorry, you have to type this in. Oh, I'm going to make it a .org since I'm a nonprofit, right? So we need to put in a fake address. And please don't fill out a bunch of fake ones for me, because I just have to go in and delete them when we do get fake ones. So if you have questions, just call me. And I'm just going to put my own information here, although hopefully this will send something to me. Let's see here, I'm going to do CEO. Okay, so this is where the eligibility questions come in. So first question is, are you able to provide documentation that you qualify as a 501c3 nonprofit according to the IRS? We're just saying yes. We do get some folks who are not documented 501c3, and unfortunately, due to the bylaws of our organization, we cannot fund them. So next question is, tell us about the area that you serve. Does your program serve primarily in Washington, North Idaho, and surrounding communities? That answer must be yes. And then you'll have to match up with one of our 5 pillars of caring, which, as I mentioned before, are transitional living, foster care and adoption, wraparound services, education, and enrichment. You could, click a couple of these, you could click one, but just make sure that as you're describing what your program does in your narrative, that you do a really good job of describing how you fit. So I'm just going to put foster care and adoption and maybe education. Then we're going to ask you how much grant funding you need. Our kind of the range that we're looking for in your grant application is somewhere between $10,000 and $30,000. And what I need to tell you is just because you ask for a certain amount doesn't mean that that's what you will be approved for. So I always recommend that people ask for the max and, cross your fingers, hope for the best. So as long as you have good documentation and you're getting your estimates for your budget from a legitimate source like an invoice or a quote or prior spending, you kind of know what's going on there. That's great. I'm just gonna put $10,000 for the sake of this eligibility check. And then we want to know how you plan to use the grant funding, because our organization and our grant funding will not cover payments to individuals. It does not cover indirect or supporting costs for operations. It doesn't cover salaries, payroll, or payroll expenses. It doesn't cover administrative costs, financial deficits, or fundraising activities. We consider those all to be things that, although they may have a benefit to the kids that we're serving on the periphery, we prefer to fund programs that are directly one-on-one impacting kiddos. So later on in our call, I'll kind of give you some examples of programs that we have funded so that you can get an idea of what things we do fund versus what we don't fund. So in order to get through this part of the grant eligibility pre-screening, you just click other, because everything else would probably fall into other, and then click next. We also want to make sure that your organization is maintaining current financial records, both at the program level and the agency level. And what this means is, your program, your agency may have multiple programs. You may have 2 programs, you may have 10. So what we want to kind of see is that relationship between how is your organization managed at the macro level versus the micro level. The micro level, we don't ask for a ton of detail, but we want to know where our funds are going. But on the same token, we want to also see how your organization is managed and run to make sure that your board of directors and your key staff members are really running a tight ship and ensuring the sustainability of your programs, because we're making an investment in your organization. And so we want to just make sure that it's being run well. Another thing that we're asking for is a copy of your operational budget at the agency level, as well as a statement of your financial position or your audited financial statements. And that's just so that we can kind of see, how things are growing, how things are changing, and how you are managing your finances. We don't do a total deep dive, but we're looking for anything glaring that might stand out to us. And then we're also going to be asking you about your board of directors and your key staff members. We want to make sure that you're able and willing to provide us with a list of your board members. Just mainly, we want to make sure that you've got some good governance and that you've got folks there that are providing you the advisory services that a good board does. So it's not that we're going to be out there contacting a bunch of your board members and sharing their contact information with anyone. It's just, we want to make sure that you're kind of structured for success and that we are investing in an organization that's really got that core group of people that's going to help you succeed. So based on those results, you will pass the eligibility pre-screening. So once you click on this eligibility details button, it should send an email to your inbox. It'll take you back to this page. So in a little bit here, I should be receiving a congratulatory email. And I apologize for going into my personal email, but you should receive this email that says, congratulations, you're eligible to submit an application. My guess is a lot of those that are here have already submitted the eligibility checklist, and you've probably received this email. So we will begin accepting our applications, or we did begin accepting them on September 1st. And the window of time to apply is going to be open for a couple of months, mainly because we want to give you all plenty of time to attend this info session, give you time to ask questions, give you time to gather all of the materials and be able to get that submitted at, when it's convenient for you. I know a lot of these deadlines come and go really quickly. So having been in your seat before, we really want to give you enough time that you can put together a high quality application and give you the opportunities to ask questions if you have them. So in order to access the application, you'll click on this button here. But before we do that, I just kind of wanted to share that you will, once you get into the application, you will be allowed the opportunity to save your application. And once you save the application, the system is going to generate a separate email that has a different link that's unique to you that will allow you to access what you have saved. If you come back to this original email and try to use this one with this button, it'll be blank again and you'll be starting over from scratch. So just remember, don't delete the email that comes to your inbox that says, this is your saved application, do not delete, because that's the one that you'll have to go back to continue making your edits with the saved information. So before I jump into the application, does anybody have any questions that they'd like me to cover as we're going through the application? You guys can just throw those into the chat. I'll give you a couple minutes to do that. Maybe not even a couple minutes, maybe 30 seconds to 60 seconds. Looks like we're good. So I'm going to go ahead and start going through the application by clicking on Begin Application. So this will upload your application, which is unique to you, and it should continue to keep the values that you had put into your initial eligibility checklist. So if that information was collected before, it should auto-populate here. So like your address, your organization name, your contact information, it'll already be on the form. But we will have to fill out the remainder of the information. So we've already covered our vision and mission and values in our 5 pillars of caring, although I didn't really go into detail regarding transitional living, or our 5 pillars of caring. So those five pillars revolve around transitional living. That's our first pillar of caring, and it's really all about those programs that are helping to provide a safe place to call home for kids who have been severely traumatized. Maybe they're orphaned, but they're giving around-the-clock care. These are trained professionals, might be even doing some medication adjustments or doing some nonviolent interventions for behavioral issues. And these kids are receiving therapy and going to school, but with the whole goal of eventually placing them back into their family or in kinship care or into the foster care system. But oftentimes these kids need to somewhat be rehabbed before they can go back. And so we're all about making sure that these kids have a safe place to call home. Other great transitional living situations might include various group homes for pregnant teen girls, or just teens that are homeless and they really just need to get them off the street and get them to a place where they can either go back home to their parents or be placed into foster care. So any nonprofits that are filling that bucket for kids would qualify for being able to apply. Foster care and adoption is our second pillar of caring. That's really any services that are being provided both to foster kids as well as their families, and providing them with support and resources, anything that's helping to make their lives a little bit better, because this group of kids, they're so vulnerable, and the outlook for foster care kids is not great when you look at the statistics. And so we really want to pay some special attention to these kiddos and their families and really help equip those families to help them kind of get back on track and to honestly feel loved and supported. Our third pillar of caring is all around wraparound services. So any community-based services that are literally wrapping around a kid who's been traumatized or abused in any fashion. So kids who have been, in a domestic violence situation, or kids that have, had to have CPS come in and kind of help out. These kids need some special care and attention. And so anytime we have a nonprofit that can literally wrap around a kid who's going through a hard time and help them get back on track, whether it be providing them with some behavioral health, or helping them to just mentorship is another way, or maybe some therapies, or even helping provide them with some supplies or resources, or just a safe space to go talk to someone. There's a lot of different definitions of wraparound services, so this is kind of it's a nice way for us to be able to fund some programs that are filling the gaps out there that healthcare isn't filling, or that schools can't fill. Our fourth pillar of caring is all around education, and we invest in this area because we believe that so many of us have gotten to where we're at because someone has helped us believe in ourselves academically. And so really helping kids to take ownership of their education and begin to build that self-confidence in at least one area, so that way they can potentially take that on to the next phase of their lives. So education is huge. Enrichment programs, so things like playing outdoors, sports, theater, the arts, all of those fine arts or performing arts are all things that we would entertain doing a grant for. Because we recognize that so much of what makes us feel like a whole person as adults is that we have the ability to do these things that, outside of our work, outside of our jobs, they just bring so much enrichment to our lives. And for some kids that are growing up in a marginalized situation, this enrichment piece or enrichment pillar may be the only thing that they really connect with to build their self-confidence. So many of these programs are being cut from the public schools, and so we just feel that this is an important area for us to invest in. So as I mentioned before, you'll have to match up your program to which one you think is the best definition of how you would fit, but you can also select more than one. I believe if you press shift and then click on a couple of them. So a good example of one that kind of falls into both, for one we've funded in the past, is Embrace Washington. They help provide a couple of things for kiddos. So we have invested in their Sleep Safe program, which provides a bed for kids who don't have a bed. Oftentimes they're placed into a new foster care situation, and the foster care parents don't even have a bed set up for them yet. It just happens so fast. So with Embrace Washington and their Sleep Safe program that we've funded, they're able to go out, purchase a bed, purchase bedding, and provide that kid with a safe place to sleep. So in our perception, that's kind of falling under two different pillars: the transitional living with providing a safe place to call home, and then foster care and adoption. So I'm just going to click on those two. Once again, that's shift and then mouse click. So we'll go next. So then I mentioned earlier our diversity and inclusion policy. I just want you guys to take some time to sit there and read and just make sure that your organization is in alignment with this. You must be in alignment with it or your application won't go through. But just really read it. Don't just click yes for the sake of clicking yes. We really want to make sure that the organizations that we're funding have that fundamental fit with our diversity, equity, and inclusion policies. And because, it's not for everyone. So, and we recognize that, but we do want to make sure that we're a good match. We'll click next. Then this is the information you already filled out on your eligibility checklist. It's kind of looking through what I've entered. And, oh, look, I found a typo. I was supposed to say fake address. So you can actually fix some of your typos as you're going through this. So, maybe I forgot part of my website. So if you've got your vision, you can always copy paste that straight off of your website into the application. And I'll do the same thing here. I do this all the time. Paste that in there. And if you have a promotional video that you'd like to upload, that would be great. One of the places that we will use this is on our charities that we support page. If you click on this, you'll see that a good chunk of them have a video here. We like to share as much as we can about your organizations once you've been funded with our audience so that they become familiar with your mission. And we're going to find that we are building faithful followers for what you guys are on the front lines doing every day. So literally, this is what we're going to use that for, is to promote your organization and to make sure that you're getting more visibility out in the community. It also helps our board of directors and our grants administration committee to become familiar with you. If you're from another, city, another state, another county, and we've never heard of your program, this will help us to better identify with your mission and what your organization has been up to. And then you're going to need to upload a logo. I'm going to go ahead and just upload a file. This will probably have to be some sort of a image file. I'm going to just pull this one in here. There are some limits as to how big that will be, and the system will tell you if it's too big. We're going to ask how many part-time staffers you have. We're trying to gauge how large of an organization you have, and we also kind of collect this for some demographic information on all the organizations that we serve. So I'm just going to put some numbers in here for us. Put 5, and we're going to be about maybe 30 volunteers. As far as fundraising, we want to know how we can partner with your organization as far as getting out there in the community, helping you to raise funds, and then also you guys getting involved with helping us to raise funds. So what that looks like is, if you get funded through one of our grants, we will provide your organization with a couple of seats at some of our events so that you can share the good work that your organization is doing with our donor base. And likewise, we would love to come to your fundraising events so that we can kind of share some of the stories about how your organization is impacting the community as well. We want to be able to help you. And so we've got a number of existing events that we put on every year. But if you have some that you'd like to partner with us, we'd love to start doing some new events. And maybe even on the west side of Washington, we can start doing a child abuse awareness event, or maybe we can do a domestic violence awareness event. And if you have other ideas, we're also excited about learning about some other ideas too. So we'll just put in here, for the sake of time, that you'd like to do the Black Tie Gala. If you want to go see what all of our events are, they're on our events page. We've got kind of a wide variety of things that we offer, just because there are different interests as it pertains to our donor base. Some people like to play golf. Some people like to dress up and get fancy. Other folks like to be a little bit more silly and have fun. So we've got our 0.5K Brat Trot, which is a Bavarian themed fun run. So it just kind of depends on the audience and kind of what cause you would like to align with us on. But we'd love to hear from you which ones you would like to be a part of. And once again, so if you have an event coming up that you would like to partner with us on, or like to invite us to, we'd love for you to share the name and events here. You don't have to put this in here, but let's just say you have a pumpkin ball in the fall and it's going to be on October 21st. And we'll say it's in Leavenworth, Washington. That just kind of gives us an idea of, oh, we should probably reach out to these folks and see if they want us to attend and how we can help them. We may even volunteer at your event. So it's just a great way for our organizations to partner up and help one another out, because at the end of the day, that's our goal, is to help you be successful, and hopefully we can really get that synergy going. On the next page, we're going to just review the information you submitted about your applicant. And of course, this is me, so I'm just going to click next. This is our key staff roster. So this is where you're going to give us information about who's on the front lines doing this work day to day. We've put in like your typical job titles and job roles, but if yours is different, feel free to fill these in a little bit differently. And if the position is currently vacant, then just leave the fields below blank. It'll come into our system still, but it'll make it easy for us to identify which ones we should delete and which ones we should keep. So this position is currently not vacant. We're going to put in a job title. So maybe it's the executive director. Oops. And obviously you're going to want to put a first name. I'm going to put Julie Fake, last name, and then a business phone number. We're not asking for mobile phone numbers or anything like that. This is just for in the case, we see oftentimes from, 1 month to the next or 1 quarter to the next, that there is some staffing changeover. So having a business phone number that we can call and just confirm, like, is everything going okay? Or, maybe we want to write a blog about your organization. We need to be able to get in touch with your folks. And so just asking for a phone number here that we can give them a call and stay in touch. And that way, if there is turnover in the position, we've got a work phone number to get in touch with. And then I'm just going to put in a fake admin. And if this person would be interested in attending events, and this is totally a voluntary field, you don't have to fill out this field, but if this person is actually interested in attending events or has interest in learning more about joining the Believe in Me Board of Directors, you can indicate there, but like I said, those are not required fields. And one of the benefits of looking at joining the Believe in Me Board of Directors, and the reason this question is on here is, we have some amazing business professionals on our board of directors, but since we don't do the programs, we're just funding them. We don't have any representation of the folks who are, like I said, on the front lines in the nonprofits, helping these kids day to day, and having that perspective kind of hardwired into our board of directors and helping be the voice of the clients that we're serving is instrumental in helping us make the right decisions. And so we are currently recruiting for more board members and looking for folks who are actively serving these kids in the community. So that's one of the reasons why this question is on here. And we would love to have the perspective of our grantees on our board of directors as well, because then you can kind of help shape the direction that we take, keeping in mind that when there is a conflict of interest that arises, we would certainly have to have you recuse yourself if it was a decision pertaining to your own individual employer. So like I said, those are both voluntary questions, and same with the race and gender identity question. The reason that we have these on here is more and more at the national level and international level for funding for ourselves. We're being asked these questions, and if we're not collecting the data, then we can't answer them appropriately. And that's what you'll find on a lot of our newer questions on the application is we're not trying to pry into anyone's business. However, these are important questions for us to understand to make sure that our board of directors and your boards of directors are structured in a way that it's representative of the communities that we're serving. And so that is really the only reason that we're collecting this information, is we want to make sure that we have a diverse board and that we have equal representation from all the people in our community. So once again, these are voluntary as far as whether or not you answer them, but ideally you'll answer them so that we can get a better idea of how your board and your staff is structured. So I'm just going to put in here that white alone, non-Hispanic, and I am a woman. And you'll see that we've got all different kinds of gender identities in here. If you have questions about what those things mean, more than happy to have a chat with you about that. And so I'm just going to put that all of these are vacant so that we don't have to go through each of these. But, keep in mind that we want, the reason we ask for finance managers, we want to make sure that if we have a question regarding, your budget, we've got the contact information here for someone that we could potentially reach out to, or in subsequent quarters when we're doing our reporting, if we have a question about something, we've got adequate contact information. Same with your grant funding representative. And the program director, if you have one, is that person who is managing at the program level and making sure that, if we have a question about the specific program that you've applied for funding for, that we know who to contact. And then your marketing person, who's doing your social media posting, who's doing, And this just basically helps us to align our staff with your staff, giving them someone that they can reach out individually instead of like your grant person being bombarded with questions from us. We can reach out directly to the person that we need to work with. So we'll go ahead and click next. You're going to see very similar questions for your board. We want to make sure that your board is comprised of folks with the knowledge and the skill set to help set you up for success. And similarly with the staffing questions, we are going to be asking the DEI questions around race and gender. So I'm just going to put that all of these are vacant just so that we can kind of, in the sake of time. But hopefully you all will fill those out. We will want to, you will need to fill these out to the best of your ability or to accurately reflect how your board is comprised. We had mainly on this board roster, we're just asking for basically your executive governance team. So your president, vice president, your treasurer, your secretary, and then one board member. Once again, if you don't have that person on your team, that's okay. We just want to get the clearest picture that we can of how your board is comprised. The one other thing that we are asking for on the board members is their professional affiliation. So where are they employed? Do they have any professional affiliations or associations, memberships? Are they doing volunteer work elsewhere? Just so that we can kind of see how they're engaging in the community. We're not using that for anything more than just making sure that they're qualified to be on your board, as well as looking for that proper oversight and governance. The next section is all about documentation for your tax exempt verification. So we're going to know what year you were incorporated. You'll provide us with your tax ID number that was provided by the IRS. We're going to have you upload your IRS letter of determination so that we can document that you are in fact a nonprofit. We're also going to make sure that the name that's on your IRS letter of determination matches what you're going by now. So if it is different, we're asking for a definition here. This actually applies to our organization. We've gone by a different name in the past, so we fall into this category all the time. And then in the case that you do get funding, we ask that you please provide us with a W-9. So there's a little link here to download the W-9. You can fill that out. I'm just going to download it here and I'll just re-upload it. Let's see here. Download that. You would complete that, scan it, and then add it back into your grant application. Did I lose it? Uh-oh. Did I lose my grant application? Oh no, I think I just made a big boo-boo. I should have saved a long time ago. Well, I'm gonna just whiz right through this stuff. Sorry, guys. I'm just gonna put some fake data in here so that we can quickly get to where we were. That's a big lesson for everybody. Go ahead and save anytime. We'll do that right now once I get some numbers in here. We'll click save. And what's going to happen is you type in what email address you want it sent to. So it doesn't have to be the email address that you applied for the eligibility checklist in. You can put whatever address here. But just like I said, keep in mind that you don't want to ever delete that because this is now where your application is going to. Let's see here. There we go. Here is our your new link. So this is the one you're going to use from here on out. You won't use the one that was originally sent to you in that first email. So this will get us back to our grant application that we saved. And we'll just click through. You'll see that my answers got saved. And that was a little glitch that I was unaware of. So I'll see if I can figure out a way to make sure that you guys don't lose your spot. So I'm going to just say that all these are vacant. so that we don't have to fill them out. And we'll do the same thing here. But like I said, please give us as much information as you can. It just helps lend credibility to your organization, and it helps us to gain a better understanding of your oversight of your board. Okay, we're going to say 2006 here. We're going to put in a tax ID. And we're going to upload your IRS letter of determination. This is a required field. I'm just gonna, it probably won't like that because it's not a PDF. I have to find a PDF on my computer. Oops, not PDF. Hopefully I have one. I'm gonna upload a reading list of some sort. Our organization's name is the same. And then I'm gonna just upload this little guy here. Okay, and next, well, actually I'm gonna save again. Should probably save each time you finish your page. That would be my recommendation. So now we're gonna ask information about your nonprofit. So we wanna know exactly where you're serving. You know, does the scope of the people that you serve, is it limited to the city you live in? Is it limited to your state? Is it limited to a region or the country? And so I'm just gonna say the state. And then we just want a brief description of where the majority of your clients reside. So I'm just going to put the majority reside in Spokane, Washington. And then we want a good description of the marginalized youth population that you serve. This is going to be unique to everyone. But going back to what I said earlier on our About page, we've got a nice batch of words that you can use there to kind of start from. But we want to know how you're identifying these kids. We want to know how they make it into your system. And so that's what a lot of these next questions are going to be geared towards, is helping us to understand who it is that you're serving. This next couple of questions came out of, and this is required, so I'm going to have to put something in there for now. Next couple of questions came out of confusion on the part of our grant applicants regarding, you know, what kind of a number they should put in here. So here's a great example. A few years back, you know, the statistics for the city of Spokane was that there are on average on any given day 700 children in foster care. So when people were filling out their foster care grants, they would say 700. Well, we would call those potential clients. You're not actually serving every single one of those, but maybe the actual clients that you're serving in the course of a year would be 100. So we want to know what's the potential number of clients that you could serve in your service area versus, you know, how many think you are actually going to be able to have a one-to-one touch with. And then in this next question, we're asking, what criteria must clients meet in order to be eligible for your services? So you could say, must be identified through CASA, or, you know, maybe their low income neighborhood. You can just basically put in here, what does a kid have to do in order to qualify for your services? And so that's going to be different for each organization as well. But we really want to know how you're going to identify these children. So, and one of the places this is most important is where, if your program serves a wide variety of kids, including kids who are not marginalized, we're really trying to gain an idea of how many of the kids that you're serving, you know, come from a two-parent household that, you know, they're two income generating and they're not low income, versus how many are those marginalized kids, and how are you identifying them, and how are you providing services to them? How do they gain access to that? So that's really kind of what we're trying to tease out here is, you know, Girl Scouts is a good example where a lot of girls, their parents feel that it's important for them to go into this. And so they save money and, you know, they're paying for it with their own discretionary funds. Whereas there are girls who don't have that. And so how are these kids being identified? how are you matching up with these services and how do you get them into the program? So that's kind of what we're asking there. And once again, this next section about the demographics of your actual clients served. So not your potential clients, but the clients that you're actually serving. So if you've been gathering this data over the course of the last year, that's awesome. If not, what I typically recommend is for you to find some statistics about the geographical region where you live and kind of take a look at, how would those dispersions of the percentages be for your geographic region. That's kind of plan B, but plan A would be that you're collecting this information. Ideally, a very high percentage of your program will be for children and youth under age 18. However, having said that, we are looking at expanding our services to helping children who have aged out of the foster care system. So just because they're over 18 doesn't mean that we won't fund, just because we know that's a population that's also completely underserved in our community. Women or girls, this is a marginalized population, so we just want to know how many women or girls versus boys. And then we do have another question later on about non-gender conforming or other sexual identities. That's also another demographic that we're capturing on another page. Then we go into the race questions, very similar to what we did on the board members, but once again, it's a percentage of the actual clients that you're serving in the past year or that you anticipate serving in the next year. So you don't need to grab us any actual numbers, it's more or less a percentage. And we're also looking at some economic factors that are causes for marginalization for these kids. So are they coming from a single parent household? Are they living with a disability? Are they living in a household that's below poverty line? Did their parents not graduate from high school? Did they not attend college? Are their parents unemployed? Maybe they're chronically without housing, or just kind of experiencing episodic periods of time without housing. And some of them might be transitioning between living without housing and permanent housing. So we're trying to gain an idea of what your client population is looking like. And then the last section that we're collecting this data on is social factors. So what's the percentage of pregnant teens that you're serving? How many of your clients fall into the survivors of human trafficking or domestic violence, abuse, or trauma, living with a substance abuse disorder? And I would say that kind of expands beyond just the child themselves, but also maybe a parent or someone in their house has a substance abuse disorder. Same with mental health issues. And then kids who are living in foster care or they're a ward of the state. And then persons with a differing sexual orientation or children of incarcerated parents. And then we go more into the actual program and your funding request. So this is where we get down to the nitty-gritty of what your ask is all about. So that last section was all about, how are you structured for success? What does your program do, or who does your program serve? And now you're going to get down to the nitty-gritty of exactly what you're asking for money for and how it is helping these kids. So you're going to have to tell us again which funding area you're applying under. So maybe wraparound services. You're going to give your program a name. So even if this is just like a special request, a good example of this, as I was referring to earlier, is Embrace Washington and their Sleep Safe program. So the organization name is Embrace Washington, but the program that they're asking for grant funding for is Sleep Safe. And that's the one that was providing the beds. So the number of marginalized youth supported by this specific grant request. And what we use this number for is we're going to take your total grant request and divide it by, the number of marginalized youth supported to kind of come up with a per child cost of this grant. And I'm going to take a little drink here because my voice is running out. Number of marginalized youth supported, we're trying to come up with, how much does it cost for each one of these kids to go through this program? So the more kids that we can serve for the same amount of money, obviously that's bigger bang for our buck. So that's why we ask for this, is just so we can kind of gauge what kind of a return we're going to get on the investment. Then you're going to provide us with a brief description of your program for this funding area. So the max number of characters you can put in here is 1,000. So as you're typing up your narratives on this, I highly recommend you use Google Word or Google Docs, or some sort of a character counter, so that you can determine whether or not you're going to go over on your characters. So just be sure to put in a nice description. I don't have time to type one in here, but you guys do this all day, every day. You're really good at it. And if you have questions on how to write a great narrative, you know, it's just like, tell us what you're going to do for these kids and how this piece of funding is going to impact their lives positively, and exactly what problem it's serving. So, you know, I would put in here, this grant funding is being requested to provide a safe place to sleep for kids who are in the foster care system that may not have a bed to sleep in at night. And we would anticipate the purchase of about 180 beds. So you put something like that. And then, what community problem will this grant request solve? So in the case of Embrace Washington, you know, many children placed into emerging care that have been taken out of the home from CPS end up spending multiple nights in a hotel by themselves with a social worker. And once they're placed into foster care, they do not have a bed to sleep in. So this grant request will solve the problem of children sleeping in an unfamiliar place and having to be watched around the clock in a hotel room by a social worker, by providing them with a foster family and a bed of their own with new bedding and something that feels familiar, and that nurturing and supporting environment that they need in order to cope. So that's just kind of a quick example. And then if you have any videos that you've already created, or you're asking for some sort of supplies or equipment or something that might have some sort of informational video that's published online, send us a hyperlink, put it in here. We love watching that stuff and being able to see exactly what we're getting. A great example of this is the Kaboom Imagination Station Playground. I'm just going to do a quick Imagination Playground. One of our grantees requested this last year, and when our grants administration committee saw this video, they loved it. It just makes it easy for us to go like, oh yeah, we can get behind that, we can support it, and we see how it's so critical in helping these kids learn exactly whatever it is that we're hoping that they'll learn. So you can just put a link in there, you copy paste. I'm going to save before I screw something up again. Does anybody have any questions? I think now is a good time to stop and ask questions and give my voice a little bit of break. Go ahead and either unmute your microphone and just ask it straight up, or you can put it in the chat if you're shy.
Hi, Julie, this is Katie, and I had a question about some of the things that this foundation will fund. So one of the things that we were looking at is contracted mental health services for children who have been abused.
So contracted mental health services for kids who have been abused. That's one of those gray areas where you have a third-party provider that's providing assistance or help. We usually take that on a case-by-case basis, but I believe that if you match it up with, well, number one, we typically do not pay for anything that healthcare would traditionally pay for. So if folks are fully insured or they have Medicaid and it's something that Medicaid would pay for, we typically would not kind of have that cross overlap. But we have paid for programs. A good example of this would be the YWCA Pathways to Healing program, where kids were entered into a program that, you know, maybe their mom had been the victim of or a survivor of domestic violence, but you know, it's not just the mom that gets impacted by that, it's the kids, it's the whole family. So we did help pay for some behavioral therapy and some training sessions for the entire family, frankly, to kind of heal and move beyond that abuse. Whether or not that was a third-party provider, I'm not quite sure. But I think that's something definitely worth putting in a grant request for. I don't see that as being something we would absolutely not fund. What we don't fund is actual payroll for bringing a new person on staff. And a big part of the reason behind that is, you know, we look at what we do as being more of a supplemental source of funding that you may not get year over year. And so we don't want anybody's job relying on whether or not they're going to get funding from us. And that's a big part of the reason why we don't cover salaries, we don't cover wages. But I do believe it would be worth putting in a grant request for a third-party service that might cover that. Specifically if it matched up with our wraparound services pillar. Another question that we've had before is like training for staff. Is that something that would be covered? And the question, or the answer to that question is absolutely. We've done this for communities and schools of Spokane County, as well as communities and schools of Benton Franklin County, where they wanted to pay for some motivational interviewing training for their staff. And what's cool about that is, you know, for, you know, not an extraordinary amount of money, we can bring in some specialized training and get all of their coordinators trained and up to speed on motivational interviewing. And then that's going to impact so many kids when you look at the number of touches that's going to help with. So that's another example of how we would pay for a third-party provider to come in and equip your staff to actually do the types of things that we're talking about. Does that answer your question, Katie?
It does. Thank you.
So anyone else have any other questions before I move on? Okay.
Hi, Julie. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Hi, yeah. I just put a question in the chat, but wondering on the social and economical categories, if we don't have data on something like pregnant teens, et cetera, would it be better to put 0% or just leave blank?
Right. So I think the more information you give us, the better. If you're not collecting the data, but you do serve that population, you're trying to kind of gauge where it's at. We're okay with ballparks, but we're also okay with looking at, you know, whether, like, if you're serving the city of Spokane has these demographics for various age categories and whatnot that are published, and we're okay with using published data if your client population matches the community. If not, you know, just take a stab and give us your best guess. We're not going to come through there with a fine-tooth comb and make sure that you have a document to support every little piece. But, you know, an educated guess is better than nothing. So, but take, for instance, a pregnant teens. If you literally know that you don't have any pregnant teens in your program, put a 0. That's great.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
It is a lot of information, but what I can tell you is we're seeing this on the grant applications that we're filling out as well. It's the wave of the future with the grant funding, I believe. And the more information that we can share with one another and just frankly share with our donors, you know, once we start gathering this information, it's much easier for us to share more accurate data with our donor base as well. So I encourage each one of you to start collecting this data. I know it seems like a pain, but we have to start doing it, and therefore we're going to start asking folks to do it as well.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, so I'm going to move on to the program budget. And so, as I mentioned before, we look at your finances from 2 different levels. One is that macro level, agency level, you know, your nonprofit as a whole. Just to see how you're managed. But then down at the program level, it's much more much more granular, I guess. So take, for instance, I just showed you all the Kaboom Imagination Playground. So let's pretend that we didn't give them enough money to fund, or even that your request was going to be enough to fund the whole program. So you're going to put in here, let's just, for the sake of this being, oh no, is this not going to let me put numbers in here? Something happened. I'm going to save and go back. That's the beauty of the save button. I'm going to fast forward to where I was. Hopefully that'll work well. This will give my vocal cords a little bit of a break. Once again, going back to the percentages, these are not required fields. This is very beneficial information for us to have, but if you're not collecting it and you don't want to fill that out, just keep in mind that if someone else does fill it out and you don't, that may kind of kick them up higher on the priority list for our funding. So here we are back at our program budget. We want to know, so I was using the Kaboom Imagination Playground as an example. So say it costs $30,000 for the thing, but you want to increase your chances of getting funding for us by not asking too much. So you're going to ask for 10,000 and you're going to say, I'm requesting 20,000 from other sources. We've already got 15,000 committed. So they're still waiting to hear back on maybe 5,000 of it. So then down in this section here, we want you to give us details on what that other $20,000 is. So maybe you have a private donor who's going to give the 15,000, and then you're going to do a Bank of America grant for 5,000, and you're going to just maybe put in here requested because because you haven't received it yet. So this helps paint a really good picture of us, of how you're going to pay for that whole thing. If your program is relying on any type of in-kind donation for this, so whether it might be donation of space or donation of volunteer time, that's also helpful for us to understand, because then we can see how you're going to make that whole picture happen. This is not a required field. You're not required to have any in-kind donations that are going to go towards it, but just helps paint a more clear picture of where all your funding is coming from. And then down in your program expenses, that was like the revenue side, like where all the money's coming in. So for your program expenses, we want to see how that money is going out. So things like rent, office supplies, training, consulting services, printing or program materials, all that would go in here. And so we want to know what the whole total is for all of those operating expenses. So this is where that, in that example I was using, $30,000 would be the whole program total. And we're going to give you, or in this section, this is where you're going to tell us where all those expenses are going to. So maybe we have training of $5,000. We're going to buy the playground equipment. Actually, the equipment would go down below. So let's just say that the total program expenses are 30,000. Oh, sorry, operating expenses. We're going to say 5,000, and then the equipment, we'll say that that's going to be 25,000. And we're gonna, and I'm dumbing this down just for the sake of time. So we're gonna say playground equipment, and we'll say 25,000. And another great thing that you can put in here, and I can't remember if I made it a separate field. Yes, I did. So basically everything should add up to the total that you've asked for funding for. So that revenue number should equal expenses. We're going to be looking to see if you're looking to make a profit off of this or not, because we're not in the business of making people or padding people's bank accounts or the nonprofit's bank account. We want to fund your program. So we do allow for some indirect expenses, but that may not exceed 15% of your program budget. So obviously we want detail about what those would be. But this is the field I was talking about. So if you're using any outside vendors or third-party contractors that you're going to be using the funds for, this is where you're going to give us information about them. And we may very well follow up with you to ask if we can get any quotes from them, or you can always upload them along with some of your other documents. But basically, this is helpful for us to know. I use that example of communities and schools and their motivational interviewing training. They gave us the name of the vendor that they were using. They gave us a copy of the quote, just to kind of substantiate, this is a legitimate expense that we're going to have. Here's what it's anticipated to be, and here's how your funding is going to fill that need. Then, now that we understand the financial picture of it, we want to understand the impact to your program and the community that you're serving. So we're asking that you provide us with a SMART goal for the program for this year. So we want it to be specific, telling who, what, when, and where of your goal with the SMART objectives. We want it to be measurable, not just oh, we want to help kids. It needs to be something that you're measuring, something that you're tracking in a quantitative way, so that at the end of the year, we can see how much of an impact these funds had on kids. We also wanted to make sure that the goal that you're setting for yourself is achievable, that you have the existing skills and resources, or you have access to them, and that this is totally doable. We don't want pie in the sky goals set. It needs to be achievable. We also want to make sure that it's relevant to your mission and also relevant to our mission. So making sure that it matches up with those 5 pillars of caring, and that you have some sort of a time constraint wrapped around your goal that you're setting for your organization. So here would be a great goal for like Embrace Washington. So you would say something to the tune of, Embrace Washington has the goal of providing 180 new beds and bedding for foster children who are placed into care that do not have a safe place to call home. We will measure this by the number of beds that we provide to them throughout the course of the 2023 grant cycle. And we will be aligning with, let's just say Harper Furniture to purchase the beds at a cost of whatever. And this is helping to provide a safe place to call home for these foster kids. And we've already mentioned the date. So you can do that a little bit more eloquently than I just did, hopefully in one sentence, but make sure to include all those elements and how you're going to be measuring this. It doesn't have to be a super hard metric to manage and maintain. Our goal here is not to make it difficult for your organization to manage measuring this stuff. So keep it as simple as possible. But make sure that it's really addressing a need and it's filling a gap, and that it is something that you can actually count at the end of the year. Or actually, we ask for grant reports on a quarterly basis. So we'll be wanting to monitor your progress over, first, second, third quarter to make sure that, if there's a way that we can step in and intervene and help you be successful, that we can. So this next question is, just asking you again, how are you going to measure the progress of this grant request? We want that to be quantifiable, and we call these key performance indicators. So come up with some key performance indicator or a measurement. It could be a ratio, it could be a percentage. I mean, it could be, just a straight up count. But we want to know exactly how you're going to measure your success. And if you're already measuring it, we would like to know what your baseline measure is. So what is that number now? And what is your goal for this upcoming year? Are we going to be increasing it? Is it going to be just a slight increase? Is it going to be 10%? We're kind of trying to gauge how this funding is going to improve or impact the kids that you're serving. And then, if there are specific resources that you need in order to achieve the goal, and how your request is going to help you reach those objectives. This is that achievable aspect of your SMART goal. We want to make sure that you have all the pieces in place so that there aren't some things missing. And then this is that alignment with the 5 pillars of caring, just trying to loop it back to how you perceive your program fitting with us. Sometimes our grants administration committee differs in their opinion, but this is your opportunity to, in a short narrative, tell us how you're a good fit. And not everybody has an but a calendar year that matches perfectly with the calendar year. So if your program starts on a certain date and ends at a certain date, we take that into consideration as well. Then two really important parts of our grant application, because it really fits in with our values, our core values of being caring, innovative, and trustworthy. We want to know what you're doing that's innovative. What makes one grant application kind of shine above another is when it's something new or different that we haven't seen anywhere else, that's solving problems in a unique way. Because really we feel that that's the way that we're going to change our community and really move the needle for the kids out there, is to get creative, think outside the box. So being innovative and doing something new is great, but then also we get sad when we see how much duplication of efforts are going on out there and how resources aren't used effectively, because we've got 10 different organizations trying to do the same thing and they're not talking to one another, they're not collaborating. So our goal here really is to really encourage collaboration amongst the agencies. In fact, we've had situations where two organizations got together and said, how can we magnify the impact of these funds? And they'll both separately apply for a grant at that $30,000 level. So you could feasibly have $60,000 worth of funding available. But by collaborating, increasing the exposure to more clients, and then also creating that cohesiveness and collaboration that's really going to make the programs even more effective and efficient by collaborating with one another. So we did have a grant like that last year that did get funded, which is super cool. Any questions? One last thing before we move on is that you'll see this little button here where it says click plus add item. So we do allow you to fill out more than one grant request on one application, but you are limited to one funding request per pillar of caring. So if you have a facility that has a transitional living program that you'd like to request funding, you can continue to keep requesting funding at the program level for up to 5 of them. And the way that you do that is you would just click on this add item button here, and you can start over with the second program that you want to do, and then you can do a third one and a fourth one and a fifth one, to make sure that you're getting exposure on all the different levels. So that's a whole nother, you can actually ask for up to $150,000 worth of funding with one grant application. One thing I do like to caution people about, though, is that we do have limits on what we can fund, and we want to make sure everybody is given an equal opportunity. And that's where I was saying, let's get the collaboration going and innovative work, and just don't ask for too much. I was saying before, ask for more than you need, but be mindful that if you ask for too much, it could be taken away from another necessary program elsewhere. So don't just frivolously ask for funding through our organization. Really be mindful about it and make sure that it's a program that's set up, it's solid, and that you're really garnered for success in the coming year. So I need to just real quick make sure I have all of my required fields filled out. I kind of started talking and wasn't really paying attention to what I was filling out. And I'm gonna click save. Okay, I'm gonna click next. Oh, see, it's telling me I forgot something here. Go next. Now we're going to get into the financial stewardship questions, and this is where we're going to be asking for you a copy of your most recently audited financial statements. And if there are notes to those financial statements, we definitely want that. If you do not get your financial statements audited, then we would like you to provide us with the last 2 years of your profit and loss statement. So that, once again, we want to look at the financial health of your organization. We also would like just to kind of gain an idea of whether or not you're operating at a surplus or at a deficit. Neither one of those is bad in and of itself, but we're wanting to make sure that you've established a financial need there, but that you're not operating on too much of a surplus. We want to give the funds to the organizations that really truly need it. If you've got your management letter, we definitely want that. If you don't have a management letter, let me know and we can kind of do a work around this, but this is kind of where we're looking for some red flags with any organizations that may have some problems with how they're operating their organization. Also, we would like the organization's operating budget. So this is not your program operating budget, but at the macro level of your agency, we want to see what your operating budget is. And then also a copy of your most recent IRS Form 990. We learn a lot from these and we do review them. So it's not a waste of time for you to take that extra time to get that uploaded there. Oh, and it wants me to upload some files. So I guess I'll be uploading some files before we can move on. I'll just attach this reading list over and over again. These will all have to be in a PDF format. You can't upload a Word doc, just for an FYI there. And at some point, you may hit some size requirements. So let me know if you hit that, and we can play around with how to get your information in. But your max file size is going to be 25 megabytes. I went in there and tried to make it to where I gave you the max. So we're almost up to the end here. This is where I want you to kind of read the fine print. So once you sign this, you are agreeing to use the grant funds only as specified in the approved grant proposal. So if you decide to use them in some other fashion, you really need to reach out to us before that is done and get approval from our grants administration committee to use those funds in a way other than what you've indicated here on your application. As I mentioned before, salaries and payroll expenses are not an approved use of grant funding. That's something we see all the time. So just keep that at the forefront of your mind. Maintaining records to show and account for the uses of grant funds. So we do request expense reports. We request copies of invoices and receipts. We want to confirm with you and with your organization that the funds have been spent according to the grant application. And we do request that you allow us to review your records and verify that those expenditures were made in accordance with what you've applied for. Once you do receive your grant award letter, and so if you're approved, you'll receive a grant award letter that says how much you've been approved for. And we'll have all of this stuff in more detail on that letter, just so you kind of understand the reporting requirements as well as, kind of what our expectations are. Like I've said before, we don't have programs that we are actively managing. We rely on you to do that out in the community. But we do need your stories. We need to share your successes and some of the challenges that you're facing. We want to see the impact that you're having on the community, because that really impacts whether or not we can raise funds through our donation or donor base. So let's see here. Oh, yep. I guess you guys are answering the questions for me. We had Marta ask if there's a PDF of all the application questions, and the answer to that is yes. In the congratulations, you can apply email. You'll get a copy of that grant application PDF. It has all the questions there, so you can go out, gather all the information you need, and when you have time, just sit down and fill it all out all at once, or you can use that save function like we said. But it is nice to have all the questions ahead of time so you kind of know what you're up against and can gather the information in a timely fashion. Just the last few bullet points here. So if the funds are used for purposes other than what you've applied for, you can ask for forgiveness, or you'll have to repay the portion of the funds not used for the specified purposes. And we have had folks that on the honor system did return a portion, what they requested funds for. and what they received exceeded their costs. And so they're like, we're happy to give this back to the foundation. Let's put that money back in the hands of another nonprofit that can use it, which was really amazing. I really respect that nonprofit for doing that. And it's a really exciting place to be in partnership with folks. And then if there's anything that's illegal, we just want to say up front, we're not going to condone any illegal activities. And we're hoping that you will cooperate with us to help publicize the grant award. We like to write blog articles about our programs and all the good that you're doing in the community. And like I said, we're all about making sure that we're setting you up for success, and hope that we can do some co-branding and co-marketing together. And other than that, we do make some requests for some information about your program activities. And so you'll receive routine communications from us that will be asking for updates on how your program is going. And once you fill out the first quarter grant report, it's pretty much kind of a lather, rinse, repeat situation until you get to the final report. But even then, it's not a terribly cumbersome thing if, when you get your grant award, you set your information systems up so that you're gathering and collecting that data in accordance with what you told us you were going to measure. If you measure things according to your grant application, it should be a pretty easy process, and just kind of do it along the way. And then you just agree to the terms and services and press submit, and then you wait. We close the grant applications on October 31st. We're anticipating a greater number of the grant applications this year, so it may take us a couple of weeks or weekends. You know, our grants administration committee is all volunteer except for myself, and they're literally coming down to our foundation boardroom, and they sit in there for 10 to 12 hours a day, pouring through all of these applications and making sure that we're aligning our funds with the grant requests that really are going to make the biggest impact in the community. So that process, you know, can spill over into December. So you should hear no later than December 31st whether or not your organization has received a grant. We cut checks and distribute those on January 15th. With us kind of branching out across the state, we may very well even make individual appointments to come deliver them to your organization and take a picture and maybe ask you some questions and get to know your program. So we really want to be a partner with you for your success, and really excited about all the new organizations that we're seeing and getting involved with, and really looking forward to a wonderful 2023. Any other questions before we wrap up? Feel free to speak up. Okay, well, I think that's going to conclude our meeting for today, and I appreciate everyone hopping on the call on this holiday, and really encourage you to reach out to me if you have any further questions that were not addressed during our call today. And good luck. And thank you for all the wonderful work you're doing in the community. We really appreciate it. Take care. Bye-bye, guys.